Хорошо, уважаемые коллеги.
Honorable colleagues, good afternoon. The last events of our forum are taking place. Everybody is tired, it's quite hard, but maybe for that reason, at the end we have such a lively theme for everyone as prospects of development of alcohol market. We have professional experts. I would like to introduce them to you. Дружинин Evgeny Anatolievich, director of joint stock company Kizlersky Cognac production plant. Афанасенко Елена, deputy head of Rosalcohol Russian state control. Where we have an empty place, we have Mr. Sazanov Alexei Valerievich, who is director of Department of Tax Policy of Ministry of Finance. He was taken by our legislators at the Committee of State Duma, but we do hope that as long as the State Duma is located not far from here and we don't have to connect with the Ministry of Transportation in the center of Moscow, otherwise the chances would be not so high. So I believe that he is going to join us in a minute, and he will join our discussion. Repukhin Sergei Nikolaevich, head of Committee of Soviet Federation on Budget and Financial Market. Kosarev Igor Borisovich, vice president of Ruski Standard Holding. President of and also president of Union of Producers of Alcohol Production. It's not related to private company, I don't know, but whatever is written here. So that's a question to the staff. Shvets Pavel Vladimirovich, head of Terroir company. Well, if you don't know, it's a large producer of wine in the Crimea. Well, small producer, okay. A small producer of wine in the Crimea. And Kedrin Alexei Leonidovich, vice president, doesn't matter, of brewery company Baltica. So basically all basic kinds of drinks are represented here. So that is why let us move on to discussion. And now I'll try to formulate a question or a theme that we're going to discuss. And I would like to ask everyone to answer this question. Well, within the recent period of time, Ministry of Finance, together with the Russian alcohol control, with the total support of legislative bodies, adopted lots of regulatory acts regulating market of different kinds of alcohol. Now we have prepared another package, quite a big package, with different innovations, be it a regulation of production of so-called pharmaceutical substance, as far as I understand that very spirit, the same thing, regulation of by means of register for brewery industry. Also, they have presupposed decrease of amounts of production where I'll try to move on to simple language, where we don't have to use the counters from 300 to 500 to 10. You offer 50, Ministry of Finance wants 100. Well, unfortunately, they cannot confirm. Or again, law on internet sales. If I forgot something, please remind me. So I would like to hear from a representative of each representative of the industry to hear an answer to the question, what is happening, how it is influenced by legislation, and what else they well, expect from legislation? Legislation, I understand, not as strictly legislation, but regulatory acts, what they would like to change or what they would like to add. But, well, let us start, as we are sitting, with the production of cognac, especially considering the fact that we have a rare opportunity. We do not have that many producers of cognac in our country, full-cycle producers. Maybe you are the only one. No, not the only one, but not many of those. Actually, full-cycle production of cognac is not very well present in Russia. If we take all the cognac market, maybe we make like 10%. And the expensive part for production of cognac from Russian grapes is quite different to other producers of cognac. I will briefly tell you about that. Approximately every year we process 40,000 tons of grapes. This is 1 billion rubles, and every year we input it for storage. This is wine material distillate and then storage in oak barrels. Around 10,000 barrels we have at our company, and there we have a distilled product of different age. For today, as a ruble, we have grapes processing, and we have processed 10,000 tons, and we are planning to process like 30,000 tons, approximately 800 million rubles to be invested in raw material. And well, for today's ruble that we invest into grapes, actually, we will take it at best after 3 years or even farther as a prepared mature cognacs, like 3-year cognac, 5-year cognac. Well, what is behind that? Huge expenses, huge stuff, huge losses. So we are a separate structure, and I guess in cognac industry, which is finally viewed in these drafts of laws, which will possibly be adopted, and they will be related to us as well. And we really would like those drafts of law to get in touch with us. But why we are cautious? I can just read out to you. The first question: changes of tax code which presupposes to provide tax benefit for using grapes while production of cognac in full cycle. Tax benefit can be given for usage of grapes to produce cognac. Well, possibly we will be able to get it from 2020. We have a question. How a company can get tax benefit for cognac produced of grapes purchased before adoption of this amendment? For instance, in our company we have 1,200,000 liters of distilled product. This is like 6 billion rubles. How we can get tax exemption? How shall we use this tax exemption? And we have some specific tasks to understand that. And what exactly for? Do we need documents for grapes? We store them for 5 years, and we can confirm the liquidity of our grapes processing within 5 years. We have no longer periods. Then it's archives. I have studied this situation. It's like that. Second question: what else makes us feel worried? Logistic shoulder of processing grapes. Well, for us it's 300 kilometers. We open 3 acceptance areas: basic production, where all the process, technological process takes place in Kizlar, where we use grape material, we brew it, and out of wine material we make distilled product, and then we make cognac of different age. But processing of grapes, so we press grapes on not far from the location of grapes, and there is a risk that the grape cannot get this unified license which is planned in 172 federal law. And this kind of situation can possibly happen. I just imagine that. And also today's minimal price, net price for cognac, in my opinion, is not satisfactory to the needs of cognac producers, which honestly and correctly make cognac. I mean of grapes or from qualified distilled product, which is delivered to territory of the Russian Federation. For that reason, our suggestion, we keep on speaking about that, our suggestion is around 450 rubles, so that we would make minimal retail price. And we process grapes, and further on we plan to work, and the company like ours, there are not so many companies like that, but they have a very long story, and economically it can be quite hard, but as related to financial component and what is there, what is input before us for dozens of years for these distilled products, make it possible for us to somehow be present in the market, even though to compete with other producers, it's very hard for us. You imagine how many people, how much money is spent in this production. That's just, it's incomparable. It's abnormal competition because measures of state supports, that is something we really need. That's briefly what I would like to share, what makes us feel anxious, and we would like to get that and see that. Thank you very much. Igor Borisovich, you have the floor. Thank you very much. I would like to start from the theme of our panel discussion, how to find business interests between the business producers and consumers. And if before 2015 I could have elaborated about this, after 2015 when the excise was increased 2.5 up to 500 rubles, and this year it will be 540 rubles, I believe that the growth of illegal production and huge amount of incomes which is received by bootleggers, the amount of illegal market which occurred due to this situation. For me, these interests were brought together because of that, because interests of illegal business in the state and consumers are totally the same. So the task consists in the fact that jointly we should cope with a huge amount of illegal production of alcohol, and thus creating unified, well-working machine, and finally to reach the result that the state would get excise and people would not be poisoned with alcohol production, and people who pay taxes would be able to do their business in a good way. This is the task, as far as I understand, which arose in 2015, and I can say that in connection with that, we did the following thing. So we adopted, overall, we have established a team of expertise of the industry, legislators who were interested in this question and who considered amendments in the government, in the Ministry of Finance, who were intensively involved into this issue. And thus, within 3 years, we have adopted 19 drafts of laws, which gave 35% of increase of legal production. So they resulted in 170 billion of rubles into the budget within the 3 years. And then one specific industry in spirits, we have made it more or less in good order. But I would like to say that when speaking about this level of income, we are speaking about 136 for a bottle 0.5 liters if you do not pay excise. These efforts, even if they are well balanced and if they were taken just themselves, they cannot guarantee that the situation will continue in the same way successfully further on. In particular, we can observe the situation, the confirmation of this statement for the last half of a year. If in 2016 we have increased the budget payments up by 16% and 17 by 7%, and in 2018 and 19 we see that we have stopped at 82 million decameters, and we cannot raise. And together with that, being experts and being people who are intensively involved into these things, we see that those who are doing bootleggers, they have created the system of production, the system of sales, which does not remind of the one that was before 2015. 2015. If before 2015 the production of illegal alcohol was done by large plants in the third draft, and that production was sold in the same shops where legal production was sold, now there is a separate channel of production and sales which is not related to general production of legal alcohol and sales of legal alcohol. So there is a system established which, if we do not continue dealing with changes into legislation, if we do not work with the state intensively, then the system sooner or later, now it's stopped, but then it will push back, because I say that, I repeat again, that income is high. The drafts of law which are urgent for 2019 and which are now in the State Duma, these are the drafts of law introduced by Sergei Lebukhin, which is related to further strengthening of regulation of medical spirits, pharmaceutical substances. This is the law regarding, well, my colleague will speak about this. This is the law related to internet sales of alcohol. Why we insist on this law to be adopted? Looks like, according to the opinion of Ministry of Healthcare, it makes availability better, and thus it has no right to survive. But I should say in 2018 the general amount of distance sales grew by 58% and made 1,560 billion rubles. So we cannot oppose distance sales and internet when people do not want to do shopping, when they want to spend more time with the family, when outsourcing is working. We cannot oppose to this trend. It's the same thing as to blow against the wind. And anyway, for today, all the consumers who want to buy alcohol in the internet, differently to the shops, 100% do not know anything about the legal level of this production. Moreover, it's 100% illegal because the official procedure is not used in these sales. And so the chain is closed with the final sales, and today in the internet sales it doesn't happen. Thus we have a situation at which a consumer absolutely doesn't know what kind of products a consumer can purchase, and if the law is adopted, when we have domain rule against RU, then the consumer will be 100% sure whether he is buying legal production or not. He enters the domain zone, or whether he buys at some website which is not in this zone. And I believe that this law is very important, and not only from the point of view of legalization of internet sales. You know that as the draft of law was adopted about blocking of website, 1,500 sites were blocked, but we have around 2,000 new websites. And today, fighting the internet, even with efficient measures, is not possible. We must create some alternative, and we created alternative in the shops. If you want to buy legal alcohol, if you are not scared of your health, you buy alcohol where you have where you have license, where you work legally. If you want to run a risk, you go to a website where they do not have domain area.ru and buy for your own risk this production. So this draft of law I consider to be very important. We have a draft of law which Sergei Nikolaevich introduced 2 years ago about labeling of the glass, which is being discussed for 2 years already. And the last instance that we managed to go through is expert council of presidential administration, where we managed to see that to convince that it's necessary, and now this is a legal regulation. What this draft of law looks like. For today, we know for sure what kind of plants produce glass for illegal production. There are not so many plants like this, around 5 plants, but the existing legislation does not provide for any kind of punishment for production of this kind of bottle. Moreover, the producers who produce glass for illegal alcohol perfectly know that they are doing that. And why we can judge about this? Because the existing liabilities to put a label of the plant to any bottle, including mayonnaise and so on and so forth, for the vodka which is poured illegally, it does not exist. So plants know that somebody will come to them whom they supply this bottle, knowing that it will go for illegal alcohol production. They do not put this label. And we want to make the legislation stricter, and this resource capacity, like production of bottle or production of medical spirit, which provides for 90% of illegal production, to bring it into good order, under control. These are basic drafts of law which are urgent because they are related to beer and something else, it's easier to speak about to be spoken by specialists. As related to minimal retail price, as related to vodka, I'm not going to elaborate about cognac. This is basically not my theme. As to minimal retail price for vodka, we have three main strong factors which are important for today. Number one, a raise of excise of up to 500 rubles for a liter of pure spirit, increase of cost of wheat to 400 rubles per ton, activation of export activity, which is taking place now, unfortunately resulted in the fact that the cost at internal market grew considerably. It's not related to whether the harvest was good or not, it's related to with the export supplies. And the third thing, within 10 years we didn't have investments into glass production, and the plants which have not constructed new plant capacities increased the price, and the price grew by 15% in average. And I believe that minimal retail price for the next year, which I think we'll discuss in September in Ministry of Finance, and we'll provide it for general discussion and adapt since the 1st of January. We'll have to consider these factors. What kind of figure we are going to have, I cannot tell you now for sure, but the Union of Alcohol Production Producers, we are going to discuss with all the members, and they sent the figure of 533 rubles per liter, for half a liter.
So that is something that I really wanted to mention. Thank you very much. So it means like it's a little bit more expensive than cognac. Yes, you mentioned 230. Yes, but please don't scare off the consumers. That was quite a sensation. Yeah, really. Because, you know, we have journalists here, and probably tomorrow it will appear in different newspapers, etc. And they will write it there. I hope that it's not going to be BBC or something of that kind. Can I have another question for you? I am quite interested. You said that, well, it will be increased by 35%, which is quite a lot. Because in 2016, I mean, the figure was over 65,000. But what about legal productivity? No, I mean, you were not talking about the legal production. I mean, it's a little bit different. We have quite a stable consumption, and we're trying to figure it out how it should be organized with bootleggers, etc. But the market is pretty much the same. It never changes. It's like 20,000 deciliters overall. Yes. Thank you very much. What about the wine? Pavel, could you please comment somehow on this? Do we also have a problem with lack of legality, etc.? No, it's quite legal, but I would say that it is not that fair. I think that the biggest problem, I mean, about the wine is all about our names. Yes, something that is indicated on the etiquettes, but it's not always the case. Chablis, Chianti, etc. This is just a part of the system. When producers of a certain region decide on a certain solution to just work in line with certain standards, etc. And we have certain appellations, etc. Just work in line with them. But it so happened that producers, well, ever we started to import foreign wine to Russia, yes, we have been trying to look at what's happening abroad, but we're trying to also implement these traditions in Russia, for example. Yes, we also want to have to see it in Crimea, for example. But as for the toponyms and other things that we're trying to use, that it's not always up to the market. Actually, we don't have a clear understanding as to how it should be regulated and restructured. For example, the Gekaze or many other abbreviations. How are we supposed to work with that? It turns out that the state is trying to to work with all those issues, and we're also trying to somehow restructure our winemaking industry, and we're trying to understand how it should be organized, but we still should say that it takes a lot of steps to control that, and the market is really diverse. Many producers they have their own wine, and also their enterprises that have their own production premises of mixed nature, but it takes still a certain strategy, I mean, to do all that. But it's not always the case. We have quite a dispute about that. We have quite a discussion about winemaking industry. Yes, especially when it comes to vineyards, etc. Yes, sometimes we allocate up to, I don't know, some billions for vineyards, and it's very expensive, and for some reason it's really expensive, but something that is delivered from abroad, it's a little bit different and in high demand. How we can make it more attractive? I mean, our vineyards. It seems like we have a problem with dumping. We have a problem with consumers who are willing to pay for cheaper products. I think that we should take certain measures and to also discuss this problem with the Ministry for Agriculture. It is not possible to make it more efficient when we have. You also looked at one of the latest programs, I mean, a pack of documents, and I think that there you can find some information about vineyards, about wine materials, etc. The information is not quite exact, but at the same time you can find a lot just to how it clarify a little bit. And also you can find information about winemaking products. You can also find it in the civil code. I'm just asking you about that. No, I'm not a professional, but I just have a question for you. Have you seen any of these elements? Yeah, we started working with Crimea, for example, 5 years ago. 5 years, and well, it turns out that we have had quite a big number of projects and different suggestions, but when it is reflected on the paper, it is not always the way we are expected to be. Yes, for example, we might have, as we say, for example, green grass in reality, but like a camel in the final result. Well, I don't know what you're talking about exactly, but for example, Yermovsky or Gref, he mentioned once that he said that what about camel? This is a contract that has overpassed many obstacles, and correct me if I'm wrong. So this project have already been put into paper. No, I'm just asking you. So everything that you have just mentioned, yes, we still have some mishaps and problems, and I just wanted to say the following thing, that the industry is quite inert in its nature. We have a lot of consumers in Crimea. There are a lot of producers who really want to have their premises in this land, but at the same time we need to do something to have a certain coverage, to understand that there should be certain guarantees is provided by the state, and we must make sure that will be provided by the state, just for all the interest to be covered. People do really want to step into that land, but there are a lot of problems still. Thank you very much. Alexey Leonidovich. What about beer? What about beer? We'll do something about that on the 13th. Yes, it's Friday. Well, something that is happening right now is a little bit different from the situation that we had 2 or 3 years ago. This trend is absolutely visible, and it can be seen in many other industries as well. And probably it was not, the same that we saw it, if we talk about excise, yes, we talk about the figure of 160 billion rubles, and thus, for example, non-alcoholic beer that is produced and that is available in the market accounts for 150 billion rubles. Wow, it is quite unprecedented. This is quite a novelty that is a real fact that we have to work with. And secondly, we should also think about the structure of the market. I think that our colleagues from Rosregulирование, they have quite a clear vision of this, and at the same time we understand that we have 1.5 thousand producers. We also have a lot of exporters that export beer from abroad. We understand that these are real partners that deliver beer from abroad, from, for example, the Czech Republic and many other European countries to Russia. As for our market, we have a certain register, and it is considered as a format just to bring more clearance and transparency to the market. What about licenses? Light. That's what I wanted to say. But as for licensing, this is a separate issue, and I think that I understand that it was introduced like over 20 years ago, but still this issue is still very relevant, very important, and I think that we need to really focus on that. I would really love to meet all of you, in a year, at the financial forum, just to talk about the industry and to talk about different problems, just to discuss how different issues have been sorted out and how we really strengthened our cooperation and how we managed to react in a more prompt way to different problems that we have. Just one example for you. Colleagues have already mentioned that we have already discussed that. We talked about selling alcohol on the internet, but still we remember that one of the major problems with that is that we might have some illegal alcohol that can be sold on the internet. We have discussed it for 3 or 4 years. I remember it. At the same time, on messengers, we have some kind of a separate world where the same colleagues, and I think that they will soon leave this internet space, but they still have been discussing about wholesale production and sales. I'm not going to give you any advertising, but for example, I still know some of the bloggers with over 2,500 subscribers, and they have the following prices. For example, the price of a good French cognac is 1,300 rubles, which is quite low. I don't mean to say that that is a disaster, but at the same time we're trying to do our best to make this market more legal, but at the same time our efforts well, they are not that much efficient, and this is our main concern. And a few more words about brewery and about this very industry. Today, our colleagues also visited the conference of the brewers of Russia, and we are going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of this organization. And one of the major trends say that we really want to somehow regulate this industry, to make it more transparent. The dialogue that we have right now, well, it was brought to quite an important level, but we do very much hope that those problems that we have and our colleagues were exposed to quite a number of counterfeit products and legal problems. Still, unfortunately, it is always quite a problem. And Lear Adams, one of our leaders, said that we want to do something about that. And we, as an association of the brewers, we want to make a difference. We want to make a difference, to change something about this situation. And we want to bring it to a new level. And I would like to congratulate you once again on this Friday. Do I understand you correctly that in the brewery industry we still have quite a problem with counterfeited products? Is it still quite a concern? No, I mean, it's still quite a concern. We understand that there should be something done about that. We have been discussing it within our association, and we have heard different reports about that. But what can we do? We need still improve the situation. I'm not going to quote any of the reports, but if we talk about the results provided by some of the Russian organizations, we can see some very bad signals and very bad omens that accounts for the so-called bad results.
And the amount of this project is so-called visible. And our first task, as we view it, is cooperation, is to identification of KPI and algorithms of definition how a legal market looks like and to what extent these or that measures, not within 5 years, but faster measures, influence over separate locations in separate channels of sales on reaching final results on prevention of this market. I believe that such approaches, such activity can be used not only for beer but in other categories as well. Thank you. Well, thank you. And as long as we were speaking about different kinds of problems with the legislation and how to improve that, well, we can't but use an opportunity of having one of the most important legislators here and to ask not to make a conclusion of this first part of the session, but at least whatever was said here, just to express his opinion. Well, Sergei Nikolaevich, thank you. Well, actually, the issue of state regulation of alcoholic market is a very important task, and this task is interesting not only to the state or representative of a legislative body of authority, but the theme of our panel discussion, how to find a balance between the interests of state, business and consumers. This triangle must, so to speak, have equal sides. We should consider everybody's interests. Speaking about most recent information that we heard in response to your question, whether a legal producer of beer suffers, well, they suffer the least of all because the amount of consumption falls down, but mostly the state suffers because they do not pay excise, and consumer who pays God knows what, and who drinks God knows what. And overall, if we speak about the problem that we started to solve in the Soviet Federation by the order of Valentina Matvienko, we have two strategic tasks or problems. What we've heard, the statistics from expert community, and first of all from Igor Borisovich, who came to us to the Soviet Federation and told us that we'll lose more than half of excise. And speaking about overall excise goods for that period, from tobacco we got 500 billion excise, and from alcohol, from strong alcohol, 170 billion rubles, and the losses like 50% is a very considerable sum of money. And that is why we invited expert community, producers, legislative bodies, and this was the component not to damage any part of this market, neither production nor consumption. We arranged state regulation judging from the cooperation of these participants. What made us feel most worried? Thousands of people died. First of all, this was human factor. Number two, these are great losses of income. And we started external factors as well. That was not only the issue of what was mentioned by Igor Borisovich, that we had a rapid growth of excise for strong alcohol, and of course it criminalized the situation. That is why, for that reason, we got different kind of underground productions, and we had to consider it from the point of view of strengthening the criminal code. Administrative Code 171st federal law was to be reconsidered, and of course we reached such a problem which can be solved outside Russian jurisdiction. This is the issue related to harmonization of excise policy within the frames of Eurasian Economic Community, because when we try to arrange everything in order here, and that the governments take decision to increase excise in Belarus and in Kazakhstan, excise are 1 or 1.5 times less. It's quite clear that fighting in the same, it's only one platform of the Russian Federation is impossible. We understood it in the first year of operation of our interinstitutional commission that we need to reach intergovernmental commission, a commission of Eurasian community, Eurasian Economic Community. And for that reason, we got a whole package of amendments within the last 4.5 years, 19 law initiatives into 14 laws, large fragments of episodes. I'm not going to enumerate all of that because it will take a lot of time. We have made more severe requirements and punishments to those who illegally produce that. This is confiscation of property, of production, and that worked within that. And it was not so declarative. It was really working. More than 600 plants now are demolished, and part of them is already demolished, and part of them are at the warehouses of Rospirtprom. And once there was a demonstration of what we managed to achieve. I demonstrated a small video. It was an impressive view, and we had to show this video as well. What is stored at the warehouse, which modern equipment is used in criminal world to produce illegal alcohol. And at that, that is the latest achievement of technological production, and it's quite clear that the money is huge in this business, in this segment of economy, in this sector of economy, and for that reason the criminal does not count money, spending it on that, and we got quite a good result, and thousands of people are not dying. The mortality rate is 2.5 times late from the surrogate which is being produced, and the first half a year of this year, Igor Borisovich said that the growth made like 5% and more than 170 million was collected for the first half a year in the current years from strong alcohol. But at that we understand that around 30% is still there, and what we need to work at, and we are doing that now. Alexei Valerievich is absent now, but he is protecting our amendment in the State Duma, and we will forgive him for being absent, including Article 78 of the federal law about budget and the issue about spirit, and because the necessity of medical spirit is 2.5 million liters, and the plant produce 7 plants, 7.5 million decaliters. Of course, it's clear that you don't have to be an expert in analytics. It goes for criminal purposes, for illegal production. Well, it's for medicine, well, basic for vodka production, and it's not only in small bottles, 20-liter canisters, and we throw it into a barrel, and you have a 40 degrees alcohol vodka, and there should be an objective fight. We should alcohol control and regulatory bodies react to our amendments, but I should mention that still there is no responsibility of producers of glass who are participating in criminal business, and those who got the agreement to agree with the producers of strong alcohol that they are obliged not to sell grass for those who do not have license for alcohol production, and most of them believe that this violation of entrepreneurs' right, and they argue our solution, our decision, and we believe that we'll get back to this issue and we'll make a strong strike, because according to our assessment, there are around 12 plants who are cooperating with criminal structures and supply up to 500 million bottles per year, uncertified and unmarked bottles. And we'll do it all right. We'll cope with that. And as related to internet sales, as was mentioned by Igor Borisovich. So our committee supports that, and we faced considerable claims from Ministry of Healthcare because they believed that such a tool like internet sales of alcohol production will result to simplification of prohibitive measures for people above age and different kinds of violations which exist today for consumers. So we considered all these factors, and we believe that we should use front-end experience that exists in world practice, and we need to move on in this direction. We have made a strike to some changes into the law of illegal internet sales. We have made this strike, but Igor Borisovich said that 1.5 thousand was closed and 2,000 new websites appeared, and we need to prohibit, and somewhere we need to bring it under control. Option of realization of this alcohol, we're going to work at this as well. And another phrase, and I'll finish with this. If the list of the laws which are still under processing, we are just upset with one situation, that at the world market the consumption of strong alcohol, Russian vodka, is very popular, but our native producers are present like 18 or 20%. Otherwise, it's Poland, Finland, Canada, and others. Unfortunately, our vodka is not ours with our brand, but it's not produced in our country. So here we made an amendment in order to create benevolent conditions for the producers who is doing this for export, so that to increase amounts, and it will profitable for producers and from the point of view of restoration of rights for the brand. But the main thing is that is income to consolidated budget. I would like to attract your attention. It's a very important moment. When we started this work, Valentina Matvienko supported, and she even asked, being at the meeting of presidents, just take his support. And there I told Vladimir Vladimirovich, and he supported me in order to strengthen the comprehensive measures of administrative influence fighting illegal production. We asked the president to support us, and he supported us, and we increased amount of excise into regional budgets. And you know that 50% is given to the regions, out of them 80% from the amount of consumption, and 20% on production location. And we believe that the more will be distributed to the regions, the more disciplined will be this industry. And I believe that considering the implementation of this package, which we are still going to elaborate this year, I believe that we will minimize the amount of illegal and counterfeit production and consumption. Thank you. Thank you very much. That would be great, even though the story with the bottles is kind of ambiguous. We should label all the bottles produced. I can answer. We're speaking about the fact that for today, it's obligatory requirement of state standard to put the label of production plant is not followed, and this is number one, the first aspect. The obligation to put a label of production plant as they do now, with the exception of the cases when they supply bottle for illegal vodka. The second issue, when you supply a bottle of vodka, you must ask the active license, not to supply product bottle for alcohol production if you do not have active license. And number three, if you supply vodka with being more than 28 degrees strong, you should put letter A, alcohol production. That is in net cost makes like 30,000 rubles for press form, and press form is like 15-20 million bottles. From the point of view of net cost, it's like 10 zeros after the comma. So this indicator is very important, and for today what happens is due to the fact that 500 million bottles are illegal without paying taxes for cash, and recently we arrested 2 million bottles of wine at one plant in Krasnodar region. And what happened then when we was arresting that? It doesn't matter whether whatever is produced, bottles or something else, it's quite clear that roughly speaking this is criminal offense. And according to legislation, policemen do not go there because they do not have sanctions. They never have sanctions when that is needed, and when it is needed, it will be okay. So, if you remember about policemen overall, I do not mean like Ministry of Interior, and lots of people present here were at the plenary session today, and there Agrev, Chubais, Siluanov, and Makarov were discussing how we should move on. And that is a phrase which is quite notorious, that most economical problems of our countries are in the sphere outside of economics. But however, they were speaking about a legislative part, a legislative system. And we should understand that what you were saying in Rospirtprom, and I'm a member of board of directors of this company, how the equipment of high quality, and that means that people there are not that simple, and whether it's possible for this small plant to exist without kind of agreement with the local bodies of authorities and legislative bodies as well. And I believe that in this situation we cannot, we will not be saved with bottles only. They will buy bottles for Narzan, for mineral water, and put in vodka. They will invent something. By the way, we are not going to raise this topic, but the thing is, as far as I know, in beer industry. In Czech Republic and in Germany, your company spoke about some figures about the package, and for us it strives for 0. So we do not use bottles in brewery. Well, new bottle costs 5 rubles and collected 15 rubles. Before that, there was only one brand for the whole country, Zhigulevskaya beer. Of course, we could have collected that. And we could collected that. And I will try to answer your first question. Of course, comprehensive measures. Oh, actually, that was a question not to be answered. Very important role of law enforcement bodies, but just a small example. When I reported first years of our work to Valentina Matvienko, she is a very precise person. She was a governor for 7 years, and her favorite proverb said that I do not need the process, I need the result. And please tell me about the result, not about the process. And I told her, well, she is convinced that what is reported by Rosalcohol Control and Ministry of Interior and so on and so forth, first of all, was speaking about 50 plants confiscated, and I told you that our legislative measures work, and she said, have a look, go yourself and have a look. Then I went to Lipetsk, to spirit industry, and when I saw 2,600 units of equipment for 1.5 thousand tons, and these plants, these details of equipments, I personally saw them making in Vladikavkaz 3 spirit plants for 2.5 liters per day, for 10 and 12,000 liters per day. Of course, every plant, as you have correctly mentioned, have some influential people who are taking care about that. And he went there not alone with the senators. He collected 5 generals, 5 special department with arms and weapons. There were 30 people, but we also met armed security, and there was kind of conflict. So we had to fight for that, and really it's true combat. And what is 10 or 12,000 liters per day? That is a considerable strike well, first of all, we got rid of them, and then I came to the head of Republic. I said, I'm sorry for me first to take out 3 plants, and said, okay, he said, you didn't let me provide Caucasus hospitality, and I wanted to store to have a tea initially. So we had to use power and not only create a law. And I'm sure that what you have prepared, it works. That is why sometimes we make such things. And I just wanted to give you the floor. Even though, like a lady, you should have had the first word, but you are the most controlling body, very manly business. Well, I would like to speak about the bottles. And many people are historical participants of our industry, and namely cancellation of repeated usage of bottle around 200 years, 2 dozen years ago, well, was a measure to regulate civilized production and kind of unit for illegal production. Honest productions didn't use the bottles repeatedly. They had expensive equipment for that. They had to upgrade plants, and at that, honest producers decided to go for that. They made a lot of expenses. We know financial position of the company was very heavy, but at that, they ordered own pharmaceutical sets. That is also quite expensive. But at that, honest participant of the market, having own set of equipment and having new equipment, could afford making well, it's active even today, technological process, like they input data and who was the producer, and in some companies it was like indication of a draft even, and
So actually, we got a product that was quite equal to something that was dedicated to, the information of the producer and the jars that were used. Well, unfortunately, it was no longer relevant. 20 years ago, it was not a problem, and it helped to somehow regulate the market. But still, we're moving forward, and we understand that we have to do something about this illegal production. We understand that we have quite a few problems with administrative finances and production, etc. And we understand that these forms and packs, well, it's not can be regarded as a panacea, etc. We need to do something about this regulation, production, etc., as well as bottle production, etc. It needs to be discussed. It is not so much dependent upon us, but still it should be done by Alcohol. I would say that control over production and also consumption of alcohol, it has been the case starting from the 15th century, and it has been exposed to quite a number of different options. Well, we have had different situations. Right now we are living in quite a historical epoch when we understand that. Right now, this year around, we listened to a decree made by the President of the Russian Federation, where he stated that we need to think about a special mechanism just to control this production and also consumption of alcohol. And I would like to stress once again that we need to do something about that. We would like to support this initiative. This regulatory mechanism should be very much supported by us. I would say that we have already 157 different statutory laws that support this initiative to control our initiatives in terms of the events that were also provided for by Alcohol Control, etc. But we also have other suggestions that need to be monitored further in terms of its implementation, etc. And it needs to be controlled. Probably we will have to have different level of loyalty and also different level of monitoring, but we have already discussed it together with the business community as well as with different enterprises, and now we understand that we need to have a detailed discussion about all those things. We would like to change the situation somehow, and we need to scale it up and understand how, for example, all those execution-related platforms should be established. And we came to the conclusion that practically the suggestion that was made by the regulator and was put forward for the business community and is now a part of our discussion. Well, I would say that the business community was quite willing to adopt such an initiative, and well, it was quite satisfied and really willing to do something about that. Right now we are in a special year when we are ready to make such a step forward. We really want to change our norms and standards, etc. But we need to understand how it should be done. In practical terms, how it should be implemented in future. We need to look at the processes from a little bit different angle, and we also need to study all those documents, and with all those documents and also the cases, Alcohol should do something to make a difference. We understand that we have quite a number of entities as well as in the central region, but we need to change our politics a little bit, and we should be quite enthusiastic about that. I would like to highlight once again that we need to not just control the whole situation, but just to monitor it in a long perspective. For example, in 2018, we joined the project that has not been yet finalized. For example, control over the state control of the alcohol consumption, and we still have a certain issue regarding this project, but it is all about estimation of all the risks that can be related to the alcohol consumption. And I'm glad to state that we are very much welcomed by the state, and we are very much supported by the state. We understand that it's very important for our consumers, but at the same time we would like to interact with consumers, and also to provide certain information regarding different players, etc. We want to make sure that, and to state once again, that we need to have a certain level of loyalty. We want to be absolutely transparent in our actions, but we want to prevent any illegal actions and also counterfeited actions. We need to use proper
that we wouldn't go into any part without any reason. We should be very precise and go along the edge. And just I would like to provide such figures like are only for the recent period, that is 2018 and till today, within the control activity of our events. What we had: 252 identified illegal production. And for today I should mention that if in 2010 we faced illegal production that was in a garage, in some warehouses, and the warehouses didn't meet any requirement, and today if this should be the warehouse of A class, of first category, if this is spirit production, this is newest columns, most modern equipment, and we were already speaking about this. Just think about these figures: 250 illegal productions. We have taken out of illegal circulation of 4.5 million bottles. Imagine the scale: 4.5 million, 1,000 in one truck. Have a huge number here of ethyl spirit and alcohol containing products, and actually this is pharmaceutical substance, and 3.5 tons of pharmaceutical substance. That is huge number of alcohol production, and we blocked like 6,000. I'm correcting the figure, and to be precise, 5,864, and the equipment that we withdrew, and we have already removed this, the equipment that is now identified and which is being under consideration in court and so on and so forth, or another body is involved there. That is 6,151 units of equipment, out of them 379. This is the pouring lines, and you can imagine these figures, you can imagine the scale of disaster. Our state is great, territory is great, geography is huge, alcohol market has always been attractive, and regardless of the fact that we for 10 years in the service and we're systematically improving control activity, I should say that we are always for the business. We search for such tools of regulation which would be comfortable for businesses. And at that, until now, we have the same situation. It proves that we cannot go to light regulation. It's not time. We still need tools which would provide us an opportunity to fight that, to keep on fighting with that. Today we are speaking about the law about about pharmaceutical substance, and I should say a simple thing. We can call pharmaceutical substance, we can call it like a medical spirit, or we can call it medical, just medicine when opponents tell us. I should say that this is just alcohol.
Ethyl spirit and the fact that it was dissolved with water by certain degrees, but still it has the same properties. And so this is the spirit should provide generate the profit that is supposed to be for the state, that has been a strategic resource for the state. And that's why the part of the business that so back in 2000 was a little bit out of the 2000 law control, and they decided to change a little bit their approach and to change their platform as well as their premises, equipment, etc. Still, it should all be organized in line with Law 181. But we need to understand that there is special zone of responsibility, and we should understand that it should all be regulated by this kind of laws. We still have the same plans, and it should be well monitored in line with Law 181. And we understand that, yes, probably we don't have any risk related to that. Probably we don't have any problem with the regulation of all those premises, but at the same time we should understand that it should be regulated, because it's not well regulated in terms of state surveillance, and we also need to understand that it should be done a little bit differently, I mean, compared to something that we have. We need to have a clear monitoring system over this spirit production, etc. We understand how to do that. We know how to keep track of that, and we understand our goals and objectives. That is why I would say that we probably should think more about implementation. We need to think more about production of medical spirit, and some people think that once it comes to medical spirit, it is not always a problem, but still it is a problem. It needs to be controlled by the state, and that would be just for the best. And now proceeding to another problem, quite an important problem, I mean, not to mention medical spirits. We should understand why we are talking about this issue right now. Well, it has taken us quite a while to understand the importance of these issues. We have been fighting against all of those problems, etc. And I would like to thank you that you very much supported us. We got very important laws, for example, number 10, 27, for example, and we understand that this is something that we need to have to regulate this industry, and we used it in our, for example, equipment structuring. But what about the so-called shadow areas? How can we control it? We understand that even though that we have quite a number of different laws, etc., and we have been very much supported by the Russian Council, as well as by many other institutions, and also by the State Duma, and now we understand that we need quite a support to understand how to regulate this industry. Right now we need to have quite an opportunity, and also we have quite a platform to keep track of all the alcoholic drinks, and to keep trace of it, both on the wholesale as well as on retail basis. First of all, we understand that it should be monitored on an item-based basis, and also it should be controlled in a larger scale. Well, I would say that it could be prevent us from working with illegal alcohol drinks, I think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it would be really fantastic. But moreover, I would say that
we can say about the skills of losses of the country into budget payments and losses from the point of view of our society, because mostly it is drunk by young generation. I would like to speak about beer, and let my colleagues forgive me. Today they have good celebration, 20 years of Rus alcohol regulation. They have awarded the most honorable participants of this business. They have given the awards to them, and Alexei Leonidovich is also awarded by Alcohol Control, and well, we should say that civilized beer business, transnational business, takes 80% of overall business, and this is not a problem of the state. This is an advantage of the state. It's honor, and there is another sector, a small and mid-sized sector. The small one is above 300,000, and that is 534 small producers, and we are making the check obligatory because we consider this capacity, whether it's truly a million or it's 300,000. I am not going to speak about the fact that we actually never faced a situation that the claim would meet really 300. Normally it's not, and out of the checked 1,733, 1,254 had violations of administrative code, and it's not related to the point that we saw that you are offending. You have 1 million and you want to work without counters till 300. It's not in this area. This is in the area of totally different nature. What is the danger of this business? This illegal business is arranged so that they completely use and they are based by the gaps in legislation. And for today, the beer producers claim. Well, I'll be very quick. Well, then nobody will ask questions. I'll briefly finish right now. So for today, I am not going to specify what kind of lacunas are there in the law, but they are there, and that is used by dishonest participants of the market. And finally, there is no light, nothing, and there is kind of machine, and they are going to do something with that, and they ask us to plumber that, and we will introduce this number of plumber into regulator, and we are like Pavlov dog. We see that it's impossible to produce beer here, but law doesn't allow us. We must put this plumber on this quite unclear equipment and get away from there. Nobody wanted to produce this beer. Of course it will be produced somewhere in underground warehouses, but not in small quantities, but in millions of liters. And what we can do? Law doesn't allow us to do anything, and we saw that it's not allowed. Then control events start, and 6 million liters of something like beer, falsified beer, was taken away by us and eliminated in Rospirtprom. This is a global problem. No matter how civilized business can be, we are proud of it. We always had a good regulatory acts discussion, but we must understand that there is this story which we should fight with. That is why we need this law. This is a tool which will make it possible to arrange everything in a good way. Thank you. Well, I would like to have a couple of questions, and after that, everyone who is willing will express their opinion. Romanov Alexander. member of boards of directors of Russian Union of Entrepreneurs and Producers on regulating alcoholic market. We knew, but we were never speaking about that. Well, actually, we have like an authority body, which is not called like a legal body, but it's a true legal body. This is alcohol regulation, but they do not give arms, and they do not have any titles, but the work that they are doing is related to illegal alcohol market. I don't like this word illegal because it's a kind of a repetition. This is criminal alcohol market. These are bandits, because when you steal from a shop a pack of chips, then this will be a criminal offense. And when you steal from the state excises, this is the same criminal offense, but of a different scale. Well, I would like to say about the following thing. Well, maybe it's too late to speak about kind of misconception of the claimed topic, how to find balance between the interests of state, business and consumers. Balance of interests of these parties exists. If we spoke about regulatory guillotine, which was mentioned by the colleague, of course, we have to be seriously considering that is a necessary mechanism. Everyone understands that now it's one of the most important targets which is done for the institutions and for the businesses and for the Russian Federation, and balance of interests can be controlled not to spill the baby together with the water. We should control the level of guillotine functioning in order to protect a consumer and to protect business from penetration and further life, parallel life together with us of this criminal alcohol market. Among the problems which we have mentioned here, we never touched upon the issue of regulation of alcohol market within the frames of Eurasian Economic Community. And it looks like this is a very serious topic, as technical regulation is there, and there are huge questions to technical regulations. And finally, as the technical regulation was adopted, there will be serious reconsideration of legislation of the Russian Federation in alcohol market control, and the only question is to what extent it is justified. Now we are creating lists of questions. We are making a list of questions on introducing changes into technical regulation, and I would like to invite alcoholic community to participate more actively in that, as technical requirements of technical regulations, unfortunately, are already, even by the requirement of regulatory guillotine, are outdated.
And some of the requirements, they are no longer relevant. It has been the case for over 8 years. Well, we have quite a kind of historical insight where we understand that we have to do excise, and also in the framework of the Eurasian community, that we need to have certain tariffs for excise. It should be, for example, 80 euros. We have quite an issue regarding this particular rate, but why 8 euros? Why euros, etc.? We understand that euro is not probably that the currency that we would love to see in this policy. It's not a part of the Eurasian community. Why is that? And when we understand that it is used as a part of those rates that are used during transportation, etc., well, it's not quite understandable. But at the same time, when we see that it's everywhere and it's used as an indicative rate, well, this is something that poses a lot of questions, and don't think that it could be used in the framework of our union, and I think that it could not be used in the framework of our relations. Probably we need to review the situation, especially when it comes to all those problems with the currency situation. And I would like to get back to the so-called regulatory guillotine. It's a very important issue, and we need to treat this issue with quite a high level of delicacy based on the balance that we want to achieve. Thank you very much. What about you? You also have a question? Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Sokolov Pavel Alexeyevich, and I'm one of the representative of the Association of Lawyers of winemaking industry. Yes, a lot has been said, and also by Mr. Gob here, and I would like to support very much that initiative. But what about us? Yes, should we have a certain pack of documents that could help us to tackle a number of issues? I would say that it couldn't actually solve a lot of problems, but still it is a very important step forward. We could use it to keep track of the origin of all those wine-related products, and also it could be a very important part of winemaking industry. We need to keep track of the wine production and also of all wine-related products. We need to use wine, but it should be somehow regulated. I'm talking about of all the wine products produced within the territory of the Russian Federation. It's very important. And the second part of the tax codes, thanks to the increase of raw materials. Yes, of course, it provides certain opportunities for winemakers within the territory of the Federation. Yes, of course, we are very much happy about that, and we would like to welcome such initiative and say that this law number 171, it was initially originated back in 1961, and a lot has been changed since that very year. But now we understand that probably we need something to be modified and to be applied in our practice. But for somehow we haven't really discussed these very problems, and thanks to Mr. Vinkovich, we finally managed to discuss this problem as well, which is really great. And a lot has been done within the period of the past 10 years, and a lot of attention has been paid to our industry. But still, there is a lot of work ahead to be accomplished. But I would like to draw attention to the following thing. Yes, we need to adopt certain laws, but at the same time, I understand that vineyards, they do not sprawl just like this all of a sudden. We need to regulate a little bit different. Thus, for example, in 2017, our Champagne representatives, they tried to somehow regulate this issue, but they unfortunately only managed to increase the number of the figures by 80%, and it was just a part of our overall figure. We don't have a substantive basis, I mean raw material basis, and we also have problem with the tax code, for example. Yes, we understand that we have enterprises that could take advantage of certain privileges provided by this initiative, but a lot of our enterprises will be exposed to a problem of very high prices, and we will have to deal with it somehow. We will have to search for some additional turnover assets, and also think about excise that will grow in size. And as soon as we start to work with such wine products, well, it will take us at least a month to provide for some production facilities, for some bottles, etc. But we will be able to cope with the numbers that we have to organize, etc. What about if I mean, for example, go to some Spanish factories, etc. Will I be able to meet the demands that we have on the market? 30 or 33 rubles. Here I have to wait a little bit to achieve the desired figures, and seems like that we could do it, and especially when it comes to quite low figures, for example 33 rubles. But will I be able to do that? And it has been the case, it has been quite a problem within the territory of the Russian Federation. What about the situation where we could have a problem with the market, with all those taxes, etc.? How can we regulate it in a more clear way? We think that all the preferences that are provided for us, it should be well regulated, and the import goods, they also need to be somehow controlled. But this is just an intermediate stage, and there should be some kind of a compromise just to save all those rates that we want to have.
Well, it's quite clear we have totally different opinions. So, well, thank you very much. We'll provide an opportunity to ask questions. Well, just I am afraid to be late for the train. First of all, I would like to express gratitude. There were a lot of interesting things. And this panel discussion, number 2, I would like to address to Rosalcohol Regulation, Elena Grigorievna. She is representing authorities of the agency. And it was very hard for us to get this, and when Valentina Ivanovna Matvienko was involved into that, and when they considering commission on alcohol market, for us to get a reconciled by all the 20 reconciled roadmap by all the 22 ministries and regulatory body, which would presuppose financial and legislative measures. This roadmap would already played its role. I have briefly spoke about what it did, but it's outdated, hopelessly outdated. Even what we heard in the last speech, as for this strong liquor, as to medical spirit, wine and beer, it should cover everything. And you are the main body in creation of this roadmap. And when Rosalcohol regulation had different authorities, top management replacement, they suggested, well, we'll offer a new package of propositions, and after summer and spring, and now it's autumn, and I would like to ask you to get accelerated to provide offers on roadmap changes for the indicated problems in my speech and then the speech of other speakers at this panel, so that they would we would manage in September, October, maximum till the 1st of December. Well, it's also important for that to be before the adoption of federal budget, because there would be some preferences, some limitation measures, amendments to 78th article of budget code. It should be done quicker before the budget is adopted. And so as soon as possible that should be done. If now we miss this budget cycle, then we'll lose 1 year. And after a year, we will regret that we lost it. Thanks again. And if you allow me, I'm going to leave. Thank you. Well, if you allow me to prolong our sessions by 10 minutes, then we'll give an opportunity for you to express yourselves. And you've said that inside the winery industry there are different opinions. And that's quite natural, because there are different ways of production, if I may say so. Well, for instance, cognac industry, represented by the colleague, and he's producing cognac from the grapes till the bottles, so full cycle of production. So our country is in such a climatic zone that it is not possible to satisfy the needs of everybody until now. But with the time, we'll get successful in that. If there is normal net cost for our products, all the legal projects will be active. We'll develop vineyard industry. Someday we'll manage to do that. But now the market should be satisfied, and there is a choice: either only import, or as we had the development of automobile construction. First, we assemble with a screwdriver, then something else. And here, I believe that the second way is more prospective, because it results steadily that most of added value will stay in Russian, even though we should move not from grapes to cognac, but from cognac to grapes. What I mean? Spilling, bring and spilled into the bottles, the simplest part, or brought, well, first not young, but ready-made spirits, blended by some recipe, and then started something, brought young spirits, stored them, and so on and so forth. And here the interests are different. And you have just mentioned that you brought wine material, and you said a month or two. The speaker is not speaking in the microphone. However, there is a problem. Well, I'm speaking about a different problem. And wine material that we should pay excise anyway, or kind of fee if it's foreign alcohol, and after some time to use this. And if somebody is going to mature spirits, to buy spirits, to pay excise and fee and everything that should be paid, and after 10 years to take it away from the barrel. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but still. So here are quite a lot of true problem which are not known to Gazler production plant. As to the exported spirits, they should be of good quality. If we take the price for grapes in Armenia, for instance, or in Spain, it cannot be more expensive, it cannot be cheaper than ours. That is why spirits that are brought here must, well, of normal quality. It should be at the level of our cognac industry to just get arranged and to bring it into good order. Identify pool of players. Well, I was having a discussion about this before the forum, and I found out that they're going to construct a whiskey brewery plant and in Kaliningrad region, and well, actually it's already constructed, but nothing is produced. It hasn't started yet, but it is already constructed. And there is another large participant of the business, Aloisi, in Stavropol region, and as they say, what I said about cognac, they are going to act in the same way. They already got a license, and they bring it and spill it in a way, but they're going to blend it and so on and so forth. And for them, that is a big problem with the absence of customs warehouse or excise warehouse. And I believe with the development, well, as you've said, it's not only there, but also somewhere else. But, well, help us God. Which is better? Kaliningrad or something else will decide. The consumer will decide what to drink. Well, just continue on this theme of wine materials and so on and so forth. It's understandable that in Soviet time there was a program how to provide wine for the country, and they calculated that it was very expensive to bring wine in bottles from the regions where grapes grow. That is why they decided to construct secondary wine production plants around Moscow, spill there, and then sell in cities. And that is why there were some suppliers of the materials. They produced cork, bottle, and collected and provided. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, all these companies were in different countries, and they were scared of raw materials to produce sparkling wine. And all over the world, even in France, they make wine from what wine material? But there are some rules of marking. If the wine is made of raw material which is God knows where, or the origin is unclear, we cannot write such word combinations which would indicate the origin. There should be any names, any labels, but even the address of production should be hidden in zip code. But they say written names, and that is the problem. And when we speak about that rules regulation, falsification, and other things, well, they work very well, like very clear, very precise. The results are visible. But when I'm speaking about names, they say, well, this is Rospatent, this is not us. And they said the Ministry of Agriculture. Well, looks like they possess best expertise, but somehow they cannot control the whole cycle, and they cannot control names. And looks like agriculture is not their responsibility. As far as I understand, the amendments to the civil code are either input or not. It's not from our theme, but you should know. Well, they can call it like Solnцедар. There was such a drink. Anybody else? Well, I would like to add, and for the last day, the period of development of winery production made a breakthrough. Till 2018, we had 132 platforms involved into wine production, and that includes Crimea. And for today, we have 186 productions. This is the growth for the year and a half. Just a minute. So, and we got farmer productions, and now they go outside of the field and they get licensed, and they prove that they are ready to produce. And I should say that the growth of production is by 2.4% only in wine production. That is but for cognac, whiskey, and others. I'm only speaking about wine. Thank you, Elena Grigorievna. Well, actually, it's a good preamble for what I was going to say. Pavlenko Elena Petrovna, Director General of Massandra Company and head of the Council of wine producers of the Crimea. Thank you for this beautiful statistic, because actually we can mention that within the recent time our industry really gets a true pulse for development. And even if we speak about the fact that now we consider third and second session of the changes into tax code, and we're really afraid, and I'm first and foremost opponent for the 2 years when they were discussing excise for grapes, for wine material. This is a terrible thing for us, but finally, having clearly worked out the tool as it is going to be brought into life, thank God that it wouldn't result in increase of administration for entrepreneurs, but overall, out of what we are going to get, this is just a beautiful thing, because today we speak a lot about how bad it is for a country when they have decrease of tax from excises, and of course this step from the point of view of the grapes which grew on the territory of Russian Federation, and this will be decrease of the stake for excise collection, and for those who use it for grapes grown in the Russian Federation. This is the term. And of course for us it will make it possible not only to be optimistic about the future, but to plan the income that we want saved from excise. And here I would like to express gratitude to Ministry of Finance for the type of wines that are being produced at the territory of Crimea, and that is historically so. And the type which has the name special liquor wine, and wine which is done from produced grapes and stored in the oak, but they are used with ethyl spirit, not grape spirit. And now the state admitted that this is a Russian production, original Russian production, and we not only should preserve that, but also multiply it and develop. And now I would like to express gratitude to Ministry of Finance for the amendments to the third and second readings for us producing for Crimea companies. And for this kind of wines, they will also use tax exemptions, which will make it possible for us to accumulate monetary funds and to send it for intensive development. And actually, I'm not going to delay you. I just remembered there were quite a lot of speakers providing different offers. I remembered the words from favorite song. Please do not change for the changing world. Let the world change for us. There were lots of sayings that the Eurasian regulation is already outdated, which was adopted in December, and now for that we need to completely change our Russian legislation. Dear colleagues, we attentively study this issue, and that is my offer, not to go with the lowest resistance, but to think about how, considering our understanding that the postulates, prerequisites indicated are outdated, and we need to maximally prepare the amendments and go along the way of changes into Eurasian technical regulations on safety of food production. This is number one. And number two, and the main thing, of course, about winery. It's quite a few, and it's important for us. We're sitting here and waiting. Well, finally, adoption of our law. My colleague, my neighbor said that we wine producers are quite hard to agree. We are creative people. It's very hard for us to find mutual understanding. But actually, at this moment, as adoption of the law, special law, regulations and rules and obligations, from the grapes to the glass of wine, which will give this opportunity for this industry to develop in Russia and the grape industry as basis for winery. Now we are all united with the same target for this law to be adopted, and for this law to be adopted not as a text on 10 pages, even though Leonid Lvovich knows how hard it was to discuss every word in this page, and all the present people remember that. But still, I would like to get addressed specifically to Elena Grigorievna as the only representative of authorities here. Please, now we are at the border of taking this decision, adopting this law. Let us not be in a hurry to adopt something, but maximally from a grape to the glass of wine. Thank you. And the last, only 1 minute to react to what was mentioned about brewery, like 30 seconds, like being the owner of a ward from Rus regulation. I would like to fight for the image of this organization when we speak about the point that beer brewery had found 1,000 claims, so well, it was not to create an impression that the regulation is arranged in a bad way, and that is arranged poorly, that there are a lot of violations in the market. Well, it would be fair to say that the violations are not very considerable, which was mentioned in the public council, and then I give the floor to the lady. Well, good afternoon, dear colleagues. Just 1 minute. Well, it's hard to be the last one to speak. I would like to address to Elena Grigorievna. First of all, I was surprised with the figure, 1,700 breweries. Last year they were on 1,300. They were grew by 35%. It proves that beer creates lots of interest, and there are new companies in this industry. But I should say about small breweries that you have mentioned, you said that they are all making violations because 1,200 companies went through this check, and I would like to attract your attention that they are going under such a check which were not done by large companies, and their checks are done from zero to overall result. And these companies are not those who are violating the law, but the regulation has changed considerably, and we had documents for equipment, to provide documents for equipment for some technical documents and so on and so forth. And due to control and regulation activity of Rosalcohol regulation, these companies are in compliance with the requirements, and they are most disciplined industry, regardless of the fact that they do not have any counters. They make reports, and these people are actually a basis for lots of small cities for employment and for paying excise, because they're located in small villages and cities, and they attract tourists. They pay money to local budgets, and for that reason, Irina Grigorivna, I think, will speak about that separately. And that's it. Well, we're not going to delay everyone, but it's hard not to agree with you that small and mid-sized businesses should be protected anyway in any industry. Totally right. And we are brought to that by authorities. And I guess another claim, and then if we checked 1,200 of companies out of 1,700, it's not for a risk-oriented approach, so they get access to the market. But this is the rhetorical question, and we're out of time. I would like to say that my text was based mainly on control and regulation activity. It was not related to providing of state service in the sector. The small companies which were not mentioned there. We meant totally different thing. As to small companies of beer production, they are very honest. Dear colleagues, said that we finished. Thank you very much. Thanks for everyone. Thanks for being patiently with us until the end, and even 20 minutes longer. And thanks to all the participants. Thank you.